Hi guys, welcome back to 2Worlds Collide podcast. On today's episode, we have Derrick McManus, a former South Australian Star Group officer, sniper, and tactical operations specialist. Derrick has first-hand experience in high-risk law enforcement operations, including a critical incident in which he survived being shot 14 times during a siege. In this episode, Derrick shares insights into the realities of tactical policing, his experiences on the front line, and the lessons he's learned about resilience and preparation in extreme situations. I hope you guys enjoy. We'll see. All right, you ready to go?
Yeah, absolutely.
Derrick McManus, mate, welcome to 2Worlds Collide podcast. How you going?
Sensational, mate. Yourself?
Very good, very good. Right in the middle of, or just after the New Year period. So how was your Christmas and New Year's?
Christmas was busy, lots of parties. My daughter's birthday is right in the middle of it all. So, that was just sensational. And I've just started getting back into some fitness after some major operations. That had a bit of a disruption as well, but that's all coming back on track. So,
yep.
Really enjoying this period.
Yeah. Do you find it really important to, as you get older and especially with dealing with some of your injuries and stuff like that, to stay fit, physically fit? Is it really important for you?
I have been told by a very good physio friend of mine that if I don't stay active, my body is going to implode.
Yeah.
The fact that I'm still as fit and capable as I am now is because I'm constantly fit and active. But that's not something that I force myself to do. I just enjoy doing it, so it's very, very fortunate.
Yep.
But it's very important for anybody as we age.
Yeah, definitely. I think like the number one thing for stuff to go wrong with your body is the loss of muscle mass on your body. So when you start to lose that as you grow older, then you can have a lot of health issues from that. I read it in an article, a guy that was doing a podcast with Chris Williams, and I don't know his name, but very famous podcaster, and he pretty much said the more muscle you lose as you're growing older, the more health concerns you can have. So you just got to keep moving, keep staying in the gym. And I've found this a lot with military guys. The moment that we stop moving is like the old analogy, right? Like if you don't use it, you'll lose it.
Yeah, absolutely. The old analogy was just like a tree. As soon as you stop growing, you start dying.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I really like to stress when I'm talking to people about activity, when you say you've got to stay active, people feel like it's got to be intense. No, it doesn't need to be intense. It just needs to be consistent.
Yeah.
Consistent activity. And it's not even heavy weight bearing. It's just some weight bearing. It's going to keep your muscles active and toned.
Yeah.
Is what we're really looking for.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I find that, and look, I'm still young at the age of 34. But if I don't use stuff, then it'll go backwards. And it'll go backwards quickly. Like if I don't stay in the gym, then my shoulders start playing up because I've had a shoulder surgery. If I don't keep running at a consistent rate, then my knee starts playing up because I've had a knee recon. So, all this stuff, if I don't keep moving, it just goes backwards on me very quickly.
Absolutely. Research that I've read says that if we don't use muscles for 3 days, they start to atrophy.
Really?
Yeah, 3 days.
That quickly?
That quick, yep.
Wow.
Now, it's obviously not massive atrophy, but that it starts after 3 days.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
It keeps me motivated.
That's good. That's good. Well, yeah, I generally, I haven't had a day off just because my training schedule hasn't had that because I'm getting ready for an event in April. But I would generally have Sundays off, and I normally struggle to sit around on Sundays and not do anything.
Yeah, right.
But I know it is good for the body, but yeah, even just getting out and doing like a 5K jog on Sunday is enough for me now. So
I would encourage you to change your mindset around the rest. That's just part of training. That is just another part of training. You are training your body to recover so that you can perform even better.
Yeah.
And it is just a mindset reset.
It is.
Yeah.
And yeah, I struggle with that because I just think I'm lazy if I have a rest day. I normally just sit there and I battle with myself all day. I'm like, you're lazy. You're
most
lazy.
powerful thing you can do.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, I'll definitely work on it. Hey, let's jump on to your police career. I normally say military career because I have a lot of military guests on, so I had to actually think about that one then. First of that, I want to understand your motivation around joining the police force and then in particular the Star Force as well.
Okay, so what you're diving into is a little bit embarrassing for me, straight up. Yeah, thank you for that. I really appreciate it. My motivation to join the police came from my brother. My brother was my hero. He's 2 years older than me. And when we were growing up, Brian said, I want to be a police officer. He was my hero, so I've just gone, I want to be a police officer as well. And all my family were saying, oh, you only want to be a police officer because Brian does. And I've gone, no, I really want to just myself. My brother changed his mind and became a butcher.
Okay.
I couldn't change my mind because that would prove everybody else right.
Yeah.
So that was my motivation for joining the police.
Yeah, wow.
It was never this driven thing that I need to be a police officer, I want to be a police officer. There's no two ways about it. I enjoyed the idea of being a police officer. But it was always this, I couldn't back away from it. But once I joined the police, absolutely loved it.
Yep.
But again, I was never a driven police officer who eats, breathes, sleeps police. On holiday, you go and visit police overseas or whatever it is. I was never that driven, but I was always driven to do the best job I possibly could.
Yeah.
And I've absolutely loved it. I actually lost interest in being a police officer around about 1987.
Mm-hmm.
I started thinking, well, I'm not as driven by this career as I want to be. I want to find something else. And this will show you how old I am. I was looking through the newspaper at job ads. There was no Seek back in that day. And I was looking for some other job that was going to drive me. And somebody said, why don't you join Star Group? And I've gone, do you know something? It sounds interesting. Sounds like a lot of fun. There's nothing better happening. I'm going to go and join Starries. Star Group, Special Task and Rescue. I'll go and join Starries and I'll do that until I find something more interesting to do.
Mm-hmm.
When I joined Starries, that was my change of life. Absolutely passionate, driven, absolutely loved it.
Would you, because I found myself in a similar position in the infantry, especially going overseas in Afghan. I would have done that job for free. I say this so many times.
Yeah.
Would you have been in a similar place?
People pay thousands of dollars to do what we got paid to do.
Yeah.
Helicopters, planes, diving, weapons, abseiling, cliff climbing, all that.
Yeah.
Meeting VIPs, VIP security to the Queen. People pay thousands of dollars to do that. I would have done it in a heartbeat for absolutely nothing.
Yeah, I absolutely loved it because I was in the airborne, so we used to jump out of planes as well.
Yeah.
And on some work days, we would just go get 4 or 5 jumps in down at, I can't remember the place, southern New South Wales, a little bit past Wollongong. And Nowra, it's called Nowra.
Oh, right, yep.
And there's an Air Force base down there. We used to jump out of there. And that used to be my work day sometimes.
Yep.
And then the next work day would spend a day at the range and we would shoot all day. And then the next day might be like close quarters and, doing like village strikes and stuff like that. And then, the day after that might be learning how far an AK can shoot or learning, what the Taliban tactics are and stuff like that. So we're, consistently just, you're either honing in your skills or learning, but you're also getting, every morning you're doing physical training as well.
Yeah.
And there was just that part of it where I absolutely thrived in that because I just love training in the morning and I love learning stuff as well. And, you're always working towards a goal as well. Like I'm sure Star Forces or Star Group was like this as well. Like you always had the next training program. You always had the next mock-up training drill or course to go on or new weapon to explore. Like you always had something to look forward to. Just like in the military, they kept you really busy like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So Star Force had the additional bonus that we weren't just looking for the next training course. The training that we were doing, we were potentially going to use on an operational job that afternoon.
Yep.
Right. So we didn't know whether it was going to come that afternoon or the next day, but we knew that we were going to be deployed to a civilian incident of a siege, a hostage incident, a high-risk arrest, whatever it might be, potentially that afternoon, that morning, called in overnight. So the training that we were doing was going to be applicable to the next day.
Yeah.
So it was driven to hone those skills to the absolute nth degree for immediate use.
Yeah. Now, I spoke to Dr. Dan Pronk about this on my episode recently with him, and we're talking about how first responders have like daily deployments.
Yep.
But with military guys, they have deployments for 6 months. So it was really easy for us to switch on for that 6 months.
Yep.
We didn't have to go home to our wives or kids or anything like that. So we could just stay switched on. We would call back home and stuff like that. But, you never had to see them. You never had to tuck your kids in at night. You never had to, go to dinner with your wife or anything. So you could just be locked in for 6 straight months.
Yep.
And you're in an environment as well where you're always around the boys and the guys. So you were like-minded individuals. So it was quite easy to operate in that area. But, with first responders and, especially people in your job, doing something that intense and that fast moving during the day and then having to go home at night, potentially take your kids to a soccer game or tuck your kids in bed or, have dinner with your wife. Did you struggle to ride them waves up and down with being so intense at work and then having to go home?
I've always been very fortunate in that way. There was no struggle for me at all, but I think I attuned my mind to it before I actually took on the challenge.
Yep.
Going into the police department, I just approached it and thought, let's see what happens. But when I decided to join Star Group, I had a mindset reset, as we were talking about before. Excuse me. I attuned my mind beforehand. I said to myself, I'm going into a really tough environment. There's a real possibility I may be shot and injured. I may be shot and killed. What are the pressures that are going to come with that? How am I going to be able to manage them? What's going to happen in my mind? What's going to happen in my body throughout that whole environment? And the one thing that I found was I was really looking forward to it. The other thing that really helped me was when people go into special forces in the military or Star Group or anything like that within the civilian environment, it's a very demanding area where you have to be absolutely 100% focused and dedicated and driven to achieve it. And generally speaking, most people put everything else in life as secondary, only focus on that. I had an absolute drive to be the best I possibly could in Star Group, but my family was always my highest priority. Mm-hmm. Everything was driven around the family. Yes, when I was at Starries, focus was on Starries, but when I was with my family, it was just relax and do what I could to enjoy my family. Mm-hmm. And so I was able to separate the two worlds without compartmentalizing.
Yeah.
So they blended, they morphed together, but I always knew where my highest priority was. Whenever anything happened, I always thought, how's this going to affect my family? Take that into account and then be driven to do what I need to do.
Yeah. Did you almost have a thought pattern to leave work at the door when you leave work?
No.
To not bring stuff home?
No. I didn't bring stuff home, but I didn't completely separate it from my life either. Mm-hmm. As I say, the two morphed together. I was very comfortable talking about it, but I didn't have to talk about it.
Yeah.
My wife at the time, now my ex-wife, was always very keen. What did you get up to at work today? And I was able to describe her in ways that are appropriate to her. Probably gave her more insights than anybody else. I loved talking about my job.
Yeah.
I absolutely loved talking about my job, but I didn't have to talk about it either. I was focused on family, and when I was around the kids, we would just do kid stuff. But it was never a complete separation of the two.
When you explained before, on a normal day where you would be normally training in the morning and in the afternoon, how many actual jobs would you get called out to, like during a week, like high intense jobs?
There would be 2 to 7 a week.
Wow.
And on average, probably 3.
Yeah.
But it could be that 7 without any issue at all. When I first joined Star Group, there was a period there where we were chasing armed robbery offenders, and we would do 3 to 5 entries a night into houses.
Yeah, wow.
And this is why I say, when we were honing skills, it was for potential use that afternoon.
Yeah.
But we were doing 3 to 5 entries, and that was smashing in the doors, entering, confronting innocent people as well as offenders. And so it was, really quite intense.
How hard is it to separate in between of, who is the bad guy and then who are just civilians in there? And what's, is there anything that goes through your head when you're going in there as well? Like, do you have any training to say or any intelligence to say that there's one bad guy in here and then there's 3 possible?
We always get the highest amount of intelligence we can. Potentially, there's going to be children in there as well.
Yeah.
And so our intel will say, from the records, we know this person associates with, XYZ people. Last intelligence was that there is a wife and 2 children that he lives with in this premises. With surveillance operations that have been in place for a period of time, they're able to tell us there is also XYZ people in there.
Yeah.
And we'll also try and coordinate it to have the least amount of exposure to innocent civilians that we possibly can. The other side of it is that, you're going into an offender's house. This person's an armed robber. They are drug dealers. They are bikies, whatever it is. The people in there are innocent, but they're involved as well.
Yeah.
So you've always got to have that in the back of your mind. We are looking for one offender, but anybody else in that environment could be violent as well.
Yeah.
So that's always in the mind. But always, having to treat people appropriately too.
Yeah.
You can't just go in and throw people to the ground and smash them and all the rest of it. You have to treat them nicely as innocent people, even though they have the potential to be dangerous, so that you can find that one offender that you really need to nail.
Is there a certain amount of training or a certain amount of time that you have to do as a normal police officer then to get into Staff Force? And is there like a selection program that you have to get through?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you graduate from the police academy, there is an 18-month probation. You have to be completed that probation. You then have to be a very high-performing and highly proficient police officer before you apply. So there's at least 6 to 12 months so that you can prove yourself. And obviously during the 18-month probation, you're proving yourself as well. I actually applied probably 10 years into my career, so I was probably late by normal standards. But our selection process was a 3-day course in my day. It's now a 4-day course because we had too many injuries in the intensity of a 3-day course. But it is based around the basic SAS course with the same amount of intensity over 3 days. But it is 3 days, 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
In my 3-day course, I probably got 6 hours sleep over that 3 days. There was rest periods in there where you get told you have downtime now, and during that downtime you have to decide whether you're going to polish your shoes, clean your kit, go and gather intelligence from the intelligence board, cook food, rest, sleep. You had to make that choice. They did not give you any insight into when you will be required next.
Yeah.
And when they did want you, it was like that. You had to be there, dressed appropriately, right equipment, all that sort of stuff. It was decision-making. It was shoot or no shoot. It was gas tents. It was initiative. It was ingenuity. It was endurance, a whole gambit of things. People break on the course. We've had people break their legs, break the base of the femur off just at the knee. We've had people's bodies go into meltdown, so they've had to be taken to hospital and spend, I think it was a week and a half in hospital just becoming healthy again. So it's a very intensive course, similar to the SAS. SAS obviously is way above what we do, but it's based on that concept.
Yeah. What's the dropout rate?
The pass rate between application and passing into Star Group is about 5% from what I'm being told.
Yep.
We will start a selection course with 16 people, and the lowest number of people that have gone through is 2.
Yep.
On my course, there was 9 that passed, and you will sometimes, many people will finish the selection course, but still will not pass. Finishing the course does not guarantee you entry.
Yeah, that's what selection course I was on. I dropped off early on it, but yeah, with 2 Commando, there were guys that made it the full 40 days through it, and the night before they finished, they got pulled aside and said, "Look, mate, well done, but we don't think you're a good fit."
Yep.
See you later.
And in Style Group, they will tell you whether it is worthwhile you reapplying or not.
Yep.
Most, I would say maybe 60%, 65% of people get through into Star Group after their second selection course. Now, when you've done the nightmare of the first selection course, which is, and it is a nightmare. I'm a strange, bizarre person. I really enjoyed pushing myself to that limit. I absolutely love that. Take myself to see how far I can go. But when you've done it once, and you know you have to go back in and do it again, and you still may not pass, less guts. That is gutsy.
Yeah. I've heard of guys doing selection in the military 3 or 4 times. And if they fail out east with 2 Commando, they'll go out west and try with them. And if they fail out there, they'll go out to 2 Commando. And, you know, they're forever trying and bouncing between them. But, it takes massive guts to do it once. And if you fail, especially make it all the way through, then if you fail and then you go back again, and then you fail again. Like, I've heard of guys doing it 3 times. Which is, you know, I take my hat off to them.
There's one person I know that did it 4 times, this Star Group selection, and still failed on the 4th time.
Yeah.
That would be soul destroying.
Do you think sometimes as well it's a personality thing? Like,
absolutely.
Yeah, the instructors need the right personality in there. So sometimes it just doesn't matter how many times a guy applies if he doesn't have the right personality, or even change his personality from the first one to the second one. Then unlucky buddy, or
they wouldn't let him enter selection again unless they thought there was potential.
Yeah, okay.
So there's always that part of it, because we've only got 16 people.
Yeah.
And you want to pick the best 16 to go on that selection course.
Yeah.
And there would be maybe, back in the early days when I was applying, there was probably 50 or 60 people applying. There's less people applying these days, but there's less people applying for the police force generally. That's another subject altogether. We'll leave that one alone.
Yeah. But it's like the military as well.
Yeah. But there's 16 people on selection, so you want to make sure those 16 have a potential to be a good operator.
Yeah. I remember talking to a friend about this as well, and with 2 Commando and SAS selection, generally they know the guys they think that will pass, so they're on selection. Selection is obviously there for its purposes, but it's also to get that extra 5% of guys that they might not know who might be on there, who might not. So they put a whole bunch of people on already knowing if people were really going to pass or not, just on their aptitude testing or their personality testing or their fitness testing coming into it. So they say, okay, we definitely know that these people will more than likely pass.
Yep.
But, there's also that 5% of people that, are going to surprise us.
Yeah, absolutely. There was one guy on Star Force selection who was the fittest of fit. His body fat was down to about 8% or something like that. It was just amazingly fit and strong, and everybody thought, this guy's going to get through. But fitness is 1/16 of the selection criteria. There are 15 other selection criteria, and they play mind games to try and put you in different headsets to try and get in there, trying to find out where your weaknesses are. And this person who was absolutely massively fit withdrew on the first day because they started playing games in his mind. We are going to push you so hard, you're going to be spewing, you are going to be, your legs will collapse by the time you get to the top of that hill the 4th time. And he's just gone, no, I don't want to play anymore.
Yeah.
Exceptionally fit, but fit on his terms, not being pushed by anybody else. And as soon as he lost control of it, it played on his mind too much.
Yeah, and you can be as physically fit as you want, but if you can't push there mentally, then it's going to be over before it starts.
We've had people who failed physically, didn't pass all the fitness criteria, still accepted because they're exceptional elsewhere.
Yeah.
You can train fitness.
You can.
It's very, very hard to train mindset.
Yeah.
It's always possible. It's what I live my life doing these days. But it takes longer.
Yeah.
And so the fitness we can build easily, the mindset, we need people to come in with that mindset.
Yeah, it's a very good point, isn't it? Yeah, such a good point. You can be there all you want physically, but if you're not there mentally, and you can train physical stuff as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Like easily train it. You can get a diet right. You can get your gym right. You can get a running program right. But, rewiring the brain to be able to push further than you think you can go, that's amazingly hard. And, I personally think you're either born with that or you're not. Like there would obviously be stuff that you can definitely do to excel that, but there's just guys that know how to push themselves really, really hard. And I think maybe that comes from early stuff in your life where you've been put under a bit of pressure or something like that, or you would know, pretty well to be able to get the best out of someone. Is there are people just born with that, or?
I believe that anybody can push themselves as hard as they want in an area that they're passionate about.
Yeah.
Now, not everybody is going to push themselves to go to the military, to the police, to special operations. Some people are born to push themselves for study.
Yeah.
Now, an analogy that I use quite often is I have the most beautiful accountant in the world. She is lovely, but there's no way in the world that accountant is ever going to be a starry. She wouldn't be able to push herself. She wouldn't be able to get fit enough. She wouldn't be able to make decisions. She would hate that pressure. But I can tell you right now, I could never be an accountant, right? That would drive me insane.
Yeah.
So when you find out what your passion is, that's where you'll drive yourself.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And that's where you have your greatest potential. Not everybody's the same. Not everybody can push them. Some people say, I love the idea of going to SAS, but I could never push myself that hard. You don't need to. You just need to find out where your passion is, where you do want to push yourself. Where do you want to achieve? And I think that's a mindset that a lot of people struggle with. Oh, my God, you were in the military. I should want to be like you. I admire everything you should do, but I could never do that, so I'm not worthy to be respected like you. No, I respect my accountant is my hero. She does the work that I hate doing.
Yeah.
Right? So we need people to chase their own passion. And once you find your own passion, you'll be able to push yourself beyond the limits of what other people believe. And that may be, you may go in and get, my partner that I have has 2 PhDs. People are driven to achieve 1 PhD and then they go, I'm never studying again. She's got 2 PhDs. She loves research and she loves being able to apply that research. She could never do what I do physically in any way, shape or form, but she doesn't need to either. Yeah. She has her own passion. She identifies with it and she pushes herself in that area.
Yeah, you make a very good point.
I also get her to do some of my research as well.
Yeah.
And she loves that too.
But no, you make a fantastic point there. I think, even with myself, like I love running. I love running long distances, but I hate doing some admin stuff. I hate doing accounting stuff. I hate, researching stuff that I'm not interested in.
No, that's
at
right.
all. And something like university for me or studying is just so far from my mind because I wouldn't enjoy it at all. So I wouldn't put the best of me into it either.
No.
And that's where your point is, like, find your passion.
Absolutely, find your passion, and do it at the appropriate level. My son is now an IT programmer working on programs that I just don't even understand. He is predicting power usage for SA Power Network and all those sorts of people for their clients for the next 12 months. He's writing the program for that. He did, I think he started 4 different degrees in IT in some shape or form, and none of them captured his attention because he was already at a higher level than that. So he's working at this massively high level, creating all these programs, but has absolutely no formal qualification because he never finished a degree.
Interesting.
But his passion was to find information and keep growing. So as a 14-year-old kid and remember this was back in the days now, 32, he would download a 600-page document about computer programming language.
Yeah.
He would read that and then start writing that program.
Yeah, right.
In that program. So he was able to receive information and make it applicable that quickly.
Yeah, wow.
And so he was driven for that. So you've just got to find out what you want to do and then just completely immerse yourself in it.
Like, you don't have to find out what you want to do early as well. I've had, like, my mum, perfect example, age of 40, was like, I don't want to do what I'm doing anymore, went to university, got a degree in social work, and now she works for the government doing social work. My brother was the same thing, doing crane work, got to his 30 and then said, I don't want to do this anymore, I want to be a teacher. So he upskilled and became a teacher, loves what he does now. My mum loves what she does. Even with my wife as well. My wife was working and then it was late 20s for her. She's like, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to get into digital marketing. So she went and got a marketing degree, started her own business in digital marketing. Now she loves it. But, you know, so like you also don't have to come out of school and be like, where's my passion? It does take some people some certain amount of years, decades even, to actually find their passion and work into it.
Well, I worked as a police officer for 10 to 12 years before I found my passion in Star Group.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
And people say, how do you find your passion? And I say, just experiment. Do the things you enjoy.
Yeah.
Right? Chase what you enjoy. Obviously, you've still got to earn money and all the rest of it. But I went into Star Group because I've gone, oh, sounds interesting. I can't think of anything better. I'm going to chase something I'm going to enjoy. And then I found my passion.
Yeah.
By chasing what I enjoy.
Yeah.
And that probably challenged a few people in, Derrick, you've got no direction. Derrick, you're not driven to achieve. No, I think we all need to enjoy life first and then, you know, dedicate ourselves to something as well.
Yeah, definitely.
But that enjoyment should come first.
Yeah. Hey, let's jump on to some of the intense jobs that you had during your time in the Star Group. Now, I know that obviously there was a one in 1994 that we'll get into, but is there any other really significant close calls that you had during your time in the Star Group?
Not so much in Star Group. We always went into some very intense situations. In the early days of Star Group, there were jobs where we went out to country locations at 3 o'clock in the morning, a rural property, house isolated, and we had to try and make approaches, and we would all come in from different directions. And I remember I got probably within about 30 metres of the house, and I was behind a massive gum tree, so lots of protection, but there was nothing between me and the house. And this is in my very early days of Star Group where I was still trying to prove myself.
Yeah.
And the boss has said, Derrick, I want you to get closer to the house. And all I wanted to do was please the boss. All I wanted to do was have him say, well done. And I had to make the call and say, boss, I cannot move from this location without being safe. And I felt weak. I felt pathetic that I couldn't do what he asked me to do. But when I reflect back on it, it was the best thing I possibly could have made a decision around then to look after my own safety rather than try and expose myself So as much as that wasn't what you're looking for in, you know, what was the most dangerous thing that I've done, I still feel vulnerable around that situation itself. There were other situations where...
Sorry, just going back to that last one, I just got a question about it. You know, did your superior or boss, did he get angry at you for not following the orders, or
not in the least?
Okay,
he just completely accepted it.
Yep.
And it was after that I've gone, oh, okay, that is acceptable to say that. I just didn't realise it. I felt like I needed to keep on, as we were saying before. I needed to keep on pushing myself, proving myself. But very fortunately, I was able to make that decision. But no, there was no kickback. There was no reticence. There was nothing else. He just went to somebody else who can get in close. Yeah, I've got an opportunity over here. Bang.
Yeah.
Where I was had a perfect view of the front of the house, white side. And so I was in an ideal location to keep observation on that house and see any movement at all. I just couldn't get any closer.
And that's also good leadership as well, that he didn't push you in there, because, sometimes leaders, they don't know everything, especially if they're sitting in the battle space, right? Like that's why they got eyes and ears and communications with all their guys, because their guy might have a better position or a better view. If he's asked someone to go there, he doesn't know the position that you're in. So, you exposing yourself to a risk. Imagine if you did run in there, got shot, and then, direct entry now goes into a direct entry plus an extraction for a person. So that would just put more lives at risk.
Yeah, absolutely. And compromise the safety of other people.
Yeah. Were you taught that during your STAR group training to, if there's something wrong, like a situation like that, were you taught to say, hey, no, that's like I shouldn't be going in there, we need to get someone else?
Absolutely. That's a baseline for every operation we do, whether you've been in there 5 seconds, 5 minutes, 5 hours, 5 decades. If you think there is something that is not quite right, you need to speak up.
Yeah.
The main reason for doing that is, the main reason is safety. Everybody's got to be safe. But the secondary reason is that if you think something is not quite right, that's where your focus is.
Mm-hmm.
If you can resolve that issue, then your focus can be on the whole operation rather than on, oh my gosh, that's a danger. I don't feel right about this, and distracted from the operation.
Yeah.
So if you can have a conversation, hey boss, I think we need to readdress this. Have you thought about what about the danger in this? And the boss is open enough and vulnerable enough to say, thank you for suggesting that to me. I have thought about that, and this is what I have in place. Sensational. Everybody's on the same track. The boss also has to be vulnerable enough to say, actually, I hadn't thought about that. Thanks very much. Not be offended by it, knowing that you can't always consider everything, but all those other eyes and ears are valuable. And if somebody says, what about this? Oh, thanks, I haven't thought about that. Taking that into consideration, we're now going to change plans to do this. And nobody second guesses it. Nobody comes back and goes, you were inadequate, you were not good enough. It is just, well done, thanks for bringing that up. And that's whether you've been in the section 5 seconds or 5 decades.
And that could work across footy teams, workplaces, everything, couldn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. That vulnerability of a boss to listen to those people around them, absolutely invaluable.
Yeah. Hey, let's jump on to that incident. It was in the Barossa Valley, wasn't it, in 1994?
Actually, just before we go there, there was nothing other major, extremely life-threatening in Star Group. However, prior to going to Star Group, I did my selection in 1989. Back in 1987 on general patrols, we pulled a car over on general duties, just pulled it over, and when we pulled the car over, it was actually parked already, my apologies, it was parked. When we went and spoke to the occupants, it was just past midnight. We noticed that there were drug paraphernalia on the centre console, syringes, silver paper, lighters, spoons, all that sort of stuff. Pulled them out of the car. Long story short, when I went to search the car, the female jumped back into the car and sat on her handbag. And when I've pulled her out of the car, threatening to arrest her for hindering us, the male offender has reached into that handbag, pulled a pistol out, pointed it directly at my partner's chest and started pulling the trigger.
Oh, wow.
The pistol was broken.
Oh,
it was a stolen pistol, and it had been in for repair because it wouldn't fire on single action. It actually had to be cocked.
Yeah.
And so he was pulling the trigger. My partner's grabbed the barrel of the gun, pushed it down into the footwell of the car and called out to me, he's got a gun, he's got a gun. I've looked into the car, seen that they're already wrestling. I've jumped back in. I've put him in a headlock and grabbed his wrist with my left hand, trying to control the gun, control him, so my partner can get it away. The offender has called out to the girlfriend, cocked the gun. She has climbed over the top of us, wrestling 3 people, and she has cocked the weapon. As she has cocked the weapon, I have slid my thumb between the hammer and the gun to hold the hammer back so it can't be fired.
Smart move.
Well, it was a smart move. But one of the things that in your email intro to me was What things do you reflect on that give you insights into higher performance? Before I went into what we're about to talk about, being shot 14 times, before I went into Star Group and into that incident, I reflected back on that moment where I put my thumb between the hammer and the gun, and I said, how was I able to remain calm enough and rational enough to take that action in the midst of such overwhelming adversity, overwhelming challenges, that I've never been in a situation like that before. And just reflecting on my mindset and how I went through that process, I then took that, and when I was preparing to go into Star Group, I've gone, how do I take that mindset and that calmness, that rational, that creativity in the midst of adversity, and apply it to what I can anticipate I'm going to experience in the future?
Because that's a split-second decision.
Absolutely.
Yeah, just to think that you could make that decision so quickly like that. I don't think there would be too many people that would make that decision under that pressure.
No. And I've never been in that situation before, so it was almost creative in the moment, but I reflect back before that, and we used to play hypotheticals in the office on night shift. Sit around at meal break, having coffee, not that I drink coffee, everybody else was, but just having discussions. What would you do if? What would you do if? Playing those hypotheticals. And it wasn't a driven, you've got to give me the right decision. It was sometimes ridiculous answers, just everybody mucking around and having some fun. But we went into the serious stuff as well. So one of the guys posed the question at some stage, if you got into a wrestling match with someone and they had a gun, how would you defuse the gun or get the gun off of them? So we went through scenarios, and people said, oh, well, in cartoons, they just stick the finger in the end of the gun and the gun blows up. So it wasn't this absolutely driven, serious conversation. It was some ridiculous stuff in there as well. But at one point, somebody has said, if the gun is cocked, you can just hold the hammer back and it's never going to fire.
Yeah.
Now, in that moment where I had to make that split-second decision, it was being calm enough and rational enough to reflect on that conversation and say, oh, I've already had a discussion about this. I can just implement it. It wasn't getting totally creative in that moment. Yeah. So all the time that we've spoken about training beforehand, getting into scenarios, learning information, the more we learn, the more we're able to take and implement practically and get our head around it, the more chance we've actually got of doing it when we get into that moment.
Yeah, I talk about this all the time with guys in the military, specifically special forces guys. Like the training works, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And like you are drilled, and one of my mates explained it perfectly. They had a day in 2013. They were in Afghanistan, and Cam Baird, MGVC, died over in Afghan, and like it was a really, really hectic day. And as they were doing the cleanup, taking fingerprints of the guys they killed and stuff like that, there was like a bit of a debrief with guys, and they were talking, and there were a couple of guys that were like, as they were rambling a bit, like they were almost still in the moment, or they were in a bit of shock.
Yep.
But my mate said he's like, if someone started shooting again, they go straight back into fix it mode or work mode. And like the training works.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't matter what headspace you could be in, or you're tired, or you're hungry, or you've just went 2 days and then cleared a village and then one of your friends had died. If the shooting started or the violence happened again, you'd be able to deal with it straight away because your training works.
Absolutely. And I love to reflect more on that training, because the training should include, what is your mindset going to be after a firefight?
Yeah.
What is your mindset going to be after you have taken somebody else's life? What is your mindset, and how do you manage that? And trying to put people into the scenario where they have to get their mindset into, and this is part of training, I've just theoretically taken someone's life. What is going to happen now? And that is what I also did for this incident. We're just going to be talking about, if I do get shot, what's my mind going to want to do? What's my body going to want to do? And what will life be like after that? And we will talk more about that in just a moment, because that anticipating what it's going to be like after the critical incident is one of the most valuable things we can do. It avoids that rambling. It avoids the mind just wandering off and not knowing what to do, how to handle it. Some idea of what you're going to deal with, some idea of how you're going to feel, and some idea of how you're going to handle it is the most important thing we can do for every aspect of that journey.
Yeah, I think, and the military is really good at that overseas, where they don't let you think about these incidents, so you don't have time to process it. So they just keep you moving, and there's a great article. There was a general that released an article over in America years ago on it, how they keep soldiers moving after the death of a soldier. The reason they do that is because if they stop and think for a few days, then guys might not want to go out, and then that starts like a little infection with everyone, and one guy doesn't want to go, and the next guy. But in that instant, we don't have time to process it overseas. So then we process it years later through PTSD.
Yep, absolutely.
And that's where a lot of the guys are having issues. And sometimes it's not even when they get home. It's 2, 3, 4, 5, sometimes a decade later. Like I remember I started feeling weird about situations, and it was 10 years after the incident. So we just had no time to process it over there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I listened to your interview with Dan Pronk, and you dive further into this with Dan. So anybody listening, listen to that interview. But it is so invaluable to have some idea of what it's going to feel like and some idea of how you will proactively manage it. You spoke in that interview about delving into alcohol, and that's something that many, many people do, whether it be military, whether it be civilian police, or whether it be a CEO who is completely stressed for an extended period of time.
Yeah, great point.
Right, they delve into it. Somebody who is going through stress in their family, bad relationships. Alcoholism is not just a military or a police thing or first responders thing. And so having some idea of the potential of using inappropriate distractions has to be first and foremost in your mind. I love talking about, after a stressful incident, after a hard day at work, what do we do normally? Many people will come home and they'll have a drink. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. It is a way to relax. It is a way to have conversation. It creates a little bit of community. But we've got to be understanding of when it becomes too much, when it's having a negative effect on our health, on our family, on our work, on our ability to operate, whatever it might be. And then knowing that we're using that as a distraction. If that's what we are using it as a distraction, what are the other positive distractions that we could replace that with? Be it meditation, be it sport, be it communicating, be it yoga, be it whatever it is. It's invaluable to be able to identify, I'm doing this too much, the alcohol too much. I need to find some other way of processing whatever I'm going through.
So many people, especially veterans and first responders as well, drink a lot to mask issues, but it's only a Band-Aid for a certain amount of time, and it only works for a certain amount of time. And then, just like you said, it starts creeping on your health, your relationships, your sleep, and then all these areas in your life start suffocating because you're dealing with alcohol or you're dealing with your problems through alcohol.
Yep, absolutely. And the other thing that I didn't mention is communication. Just absolutely finding someone you can talk to about, and you need to be vulnerable enough to say, hey, listen, I've been hitting the alcohol too much. I think I need to talk to someone, whether it be a mate, whether it be a professional. And again, please remind me to come back to this because one of the most invaluable things I did after my shooting was 5 days afterwards, and this is 30 years ago, so I use inverted commas, real men didn't talk to psychologists, psychiatrists, therapists back 30 years ago.
It was known as weak.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. Why would you do that?
Yep.
But I was very fortunate. I threw my hand in there and said, get me a psych. I want to talk to a psych.
That's good.
So, but I had a purpose in that.
Yeah.
And so we'll come back and talk about that in a moment.
All right. Well, let's, if you could just tell me, what happened that day, if that's all right.
Yeah, absolutely. Normal operating day, done training in the morning. I actually went out and played police basketball during work time. So, love that job. So it's just a normal day. Then we got a call to say that there was an offender that needed to be arrested because he'd failed to appear in court. And the court appearance was for 197 counts of fraud. Not something you normally associate with violence, but we knew this person's history.
Mm-hmm.
We knew that he had threatened to shoot police in the past, never done anything of violence, but he'd made that threat. So that made him a high-risk offender. So they asked staff group to go out and arrest him. We went out there dressed in full police uniform, wearing flak vests, and armed only with pistols. There was a little bit of controversy around that because we wanted to go in with something more. Somebody else made a decision that we'd just do it this way because he'd never been a threat before.
Interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. And that could go into a much deeper conversation.
It could. We'd go down the rabbit hole there.
Yeah, absolutely. But we went in there. We knocked on the front door, called out that we were the police, and we wanted to talk to the person inside. And there was no answer. Sorry, my mind is processing what we've discussed before and what I'm talking about now. So there was no answer when we knocked on the door. However, we had a sniper sitting in the bush for about the last 20 minutes watching the house, watching the offender. We knew he was inside. Mm-hmm. The sergeant has knocked again, called again. There were 4 other members of Star Group there. One was the sergeant, 2 other people with the sergeant and I at the door and the sniper, and another guy with a video camera. And so this is the first time a video has ever been used on an arrest in South Australia, probably in Australia.
Is there still the footage kicking around?
There is. You can get it on YouTube. You can get it on my website.
Okay.
Yeah, interesting footage.
Yep.
And you will hear in that footage the shooting of me being shot, me firing back, and it's I laugh, Riley. You hear him firing with an SKK, which is similar to those people listening to a AK-47. So it was a Chinese military rifle firing 7.62 or 308. And you can hear him firing, and it's bang, bang, bang. And you hear me shooting back with a pistol, and it sounds like pop.
Yeah,
pop,
a little pea shooter.
Yeah, absolutely embarrassing almost. Yeah. But anyway, we knocked, called. He didn't answer, but we knew he was inside. Sergeant's knocked again. At this stage, our primary entry was going to be through the front door, but that was going to take leveraging the screen door open, then smashing in the front door with a battering ram, and then making an entry. I noticed a glass sliding door down the side of the house, which would have made a more efficient, effective entry. So I went down the side of the house just 5 steps away from the corner where I was to make that assessment. I was going to make that assessment, come back and say, Sarge, door down here, we can use this as an entry. As I got too close to that door, within about 2 feet of that door, the offender saw me and started shooting with the SKK. He fired 18 times in less than 5 seconds, hit me 14 times.
Wow. With
either bullets or shrapnel.
So he would have just held it down, got a automatic blast out of it?
No, semi-auto.
No. Oh, really?
It was semi-auto. We have taken that weapon to the range. I say we. Other members of Star Group have taken that weapon to the range. Nobody can fire it that fast. So either he was really well trained, which he did a lot of training with weapons. He used to be a firearms dealer. He had a lot of weapons, and he had involvement with very peripheral involvement with mafia type connections. Yeah. So he had reason to be concerned for his safety. So he would do a lot, but it was either well trained or high adrenaline.
Yeah.
Nobody else has been able to fire that weapon that fast.
Wow.
Even defence research down at Edinburgh, they took the weapon, they couldn't fire it that fast.
Yeah. Me just knowing a fair bit about, shooting AK-47s and the damage they can do. The F-88s that we used overseas, which is the Australian military main choice of weapon for the infantry, they shoot 5.56. They can do a bit of damage. I was a machine gunner overseas. I had a 58 Mag 58. So
Okay,
I shot this 7.62 belt fed machine gun, and I know what they can do. In regards to like injuring someone and the power they have behind them. So getting shot with a 7.62, especially from close range like that, can be very, very damaging. So I just want to like, where did it hit you? And like, has anyone ever said your survival? Like, what were the chances of your survival rate?
Oh yeah, that's been well discussed and probably reasonably documented. So the bonus is that it was a military round, full metal jacket, right? So if it had been hollow point, it would have done massive damage by the exploding or the expanding head. Yeah. But the military rounds are designed to injure, not kill, as much as possible. So I had 2 bullets in the stomach. They went through the flak vest, right? Soft body armor does not stop 7.62 or a 5.56. The high velocity, supersonic.
Especially from that range.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I had 2 bullets in the stomach. I lost 45 centimetres of bowel all up.
Wow.
Some small, some large. I had a ceramic plate on. The ceramic plate took a direct hit and stopped a round. That hit just underneath the heart-lung area. So if it hadn't been for that ceramic plate, that could have been very, very different. 2 bullets hit my left thigh and penetrated into my left thigh, missed the femoral artery by the width of a piece of paper. A 3rd round hit a piece of equipment on my left thigh, a spare magazine on my left thigh. That stopped a 3rd penetration in there. 1 bullet hit my left forearm, and that bullet hit the radius bone. And when it hit the bone, obviously the bone shattered, but also the bullet shattered. So the exit wound on the inside of my arm, and I'll show you that another time, but it is absolutely massive. It basically took out the whole inside of my arm. It severed the radial artery, damaged nerves, and stretched tendons. I had a piece of shrapnel that hit my right wrist. That severed the ulnar artery, but that piece of shrapnel stayed in there and blocked that artery. The radial artery on the left forearm, completely open and potential for bleeding. Yeah. 1 bullet went through my right Achilles tendon, took out 80% of the thickness of my Achilles tendon, and it went through my boot as well as my tendon, and the entry and exit wound in that boot just really shows how it goes in as a driven little hole, and because it's full metal jacket, it comes out basically the same size. Only slightly larger. Yeah. But it took out 80% of my Achilles for about an inch and a half. 3 bullets went across the back of my left calf. 1 bullet hit, or bit of shrapnel hit him behind my right knee. And there was another bullet that hit the groin flap. Now, I know that in police and in all states, people hate pulling the groin flap down because it gets in your way when you're walking, when you're running, when you're moving, when you're getting in and out of cars. I don't know what it's like in the military, whether people always have the groin flap down.
We always had them up.
Yeah, right. Okay. Well, this may change people's attitudes. A bullet hit that groin flap. It stopped in the groin flap, and there was no damage behind there. Wow. And I'm very thankful for that today, let me tell you. Yeah. It's obviously there to protect the femoral arteries, but it also protects all that other stuff there. And so, having that groin flap down, absolutely invaluable.
Yep. So, initial reaction from yourself and then also your team, and also, did you go into like a state of shock? Is your memory really faded from this incident after being shot?
I was on the ground for 3 hours. Wow. Fully conscious.
Is that because the situation was that intense that they couldn't get to you, or?
Correct.
Yep.
A little bit situational in that initially, absolutely immediately, they didn't realise I'd been shot. And so when the shooting started, and you can see this in the video, the shooting started and you can see the sergeant's head sort of go, oh, that's not what I was expecting. And he steps in behind a brick pillar to protect himself. And then without any conversation, the guys at the front of the house just look at each other and they go, this is the wrong place to be. And they all move on the instant and start moving away. As they start moving away, I call out, I'm hit, I'm hit. Now, they've already got movement in one direction. They're now in no man land. So they keep on moving, find a place of strength, and then they start calling out, Derrick, where are you? Derrick, where are you? And they're already saying, Derrick's down, call for backup, as they're moving to a position of strength.
On the radio.
Out loud. You can hear it on the video.
Yeah.
And so they're just talking between each other. It's not until they find a position of safety and strength that they start getting onto the radio to other people. Mm-hmm. So as they're moving away, they're going, I call out, I'm hit, I'm hit. They instantly start saying, Derrick's down, call for backup. And then they get to a position of strength and they start calling out to me, Derrick, where are you? And this is not video that you will see on the internet. This is a video that I now have on my computer as well. But you'll see that they get into that position of strength and they start calling out, trying to contact me and trying to get to me. Mm-hmm. I can't hear them and they can't hear me after they move. And so when I get shot, you say, did I instantly go into shock? I think there was this instant shock. And I call it complete overwhelm. Something that I didn't expect to happen at that moment has happened, and my mind goes into overwhelm. Our emotions go high, our rational thinking goes low, and this is where shock comes in. The bonus for me is that I'd done this mental preparation beforehand and said, if I get shot and injured, how do I want to respond? Going into Star Group, it was reality to say there's a high potential. I may be shot and injured. I may be shot and killed. Now, I spoke about this with my wife 5 years prior to the shooting when I first joined Star Group. And I said, I may be shot and injured. I may be shot and killed. I need you to know right now that if I don't die, anything better than death is a bonus to me. Anything better than death is a bonus. I may spend the rest of my life in a wheelchair, but anything better than death is a bonus because family is the most important thing to me. So long as I'm able to interact with my children, I will find a way to be happy. So I'd already had this headset of the reality is I may be shot and injured. I may die, but if I don't die, I then said to myself, how do I want to respond to it? What's going to happen in my mind? What's going to happen in my body? How do I morph those two together to get the best, what I call optimal performance in conditions of adversity? And so I said to myself, what do I want to do? So when I first got shot, absolute overwhelm. I didn't realize it was happening to me. All I knew was I was looking at this door one moment and the next moment I'm falling to the ground. And I am berating myself because I don't feel any impact. I don't feel any pain. Don't even hear the sound of gunfire. All I know is I'm falling to the ground. And I'm berating myself. How can I be so stupid? This is ridiculous. Why am I falling? Really judgmental of myself. As I'm falling, and this is partly in slow motion because I'm able to process it. As I'm falling, I look at that glass sliding door again, and there are small round holes that hadn't been there before. I don't know what those small round holes are from, but then I hear the sound of gunfire somewhere in the distance behind it, and it is that distinct. Small round holes. Oh, there's also gunfire coming from behind that. And as I'm falling to the ground, I'm rationalizing to myself, sound of gunfire, small round holes, me falling inexplicably, I must be getting shot. And so before I even hit the ground, the thought that runs through my head is, Derrick, don't be too hard on yourself because if you're getting shot, it's quite acceptable to fall over. And that's how rational I was during this whole process. Complete overwhelm. I don't hear the sound, don't feel the pain, but I'm able to process this in a very short space of time. I fall to the ground. I land on my back, my feet pointing directly at where the bullets are coming from, head facing away. And while I'm lying here, he's still shooting. This is when I get hit in the thigh with those two bullets. And time completely slows down. These two bullets, 18 bullets are fired in less than 5 seconds. These two bullets seem to take about 30 seconds to hit me.
Wow.
Because my mind just analyzes every little detail. I remember, and this is so clear in my mind even today, without trauma, But I remember the first bullet absolutely smashing into my thigh. And there was no pain, but it felt like the force of a sledgehammer just hitting me. And then this shockwave from this sledgehammer has gone through my body all the way up and then all the way back down again.
Wow.
And then the second bullet hit. And again, it's that sledgehammer absolutely driving into me. And this shockwave slowly goes up through the body. It slowly comes back down, seemingly 30 seconds for these two bullets. And during that time, I'm thinking to myself, how can I lie here and just accept being shot?
Yeah.
This is ridiculous. I've already got my pistol in my hand. I know I need to fire back. But as I line up to fire back, my thought goes a little bit outside the square, and I realise I'm firing back along the length of my body. And at the other end of my body are my feet. My feet, when you're lying on your back, are sticking up in the air.
Yeah.
And I know that I need to get up just that little bit to fire across the top of my feet. But I've got a flak vest on, I've got weaponry, I've got equipment on my upper body, and as I lift my upper body up...
And you've also been shot 17 times.
14 times.
14 times.
I'll go with 17, I'm very happy with that, but I've also been shot. But as I lift my upper body up, my feet come up to counterbalance.
Yeah.
And the thought that ran through my head was, I better not shoot myself in the foot, because the guys at work will give me shit for the rest of my life. Like, I'm sure you'd appreciate if you get shot 14 times and then you shoot yourself in the foot.
That's what everyone will remember.
Absolutely. And the nicknames that come out of that were not going to be great. But that's the thought that ran through my mind.
Mm-hmm.
But that's because I'd done the mental preparation before. If I do get shot, how do I want to respond? This is a reality of the situation that I'm going into. I need to prepare for it appropriately, not just physically, mentally and emotionally as well. And when I did that thinking 5 years prior to the shooting, I also said, if I do get shot, what will life look like after that? What will the challenges be? Nightmares, flashbacks, panic attacks, impact on my family, impact on my sleep, all those things. How will it affect me, and will I be able to manage that? And I had to consciously sit down with myself and say, do I have the mental and emotional capacity to manage that going forward in life? And the one thing, again, I go back to Star Group was a very important part of my life. My family was my absolute driver. The one thing that I wanted, and for the 3 hours I was lying on the ground, this is what I thought about, being fully conscious. All I wanted afterwards was to get back to my family and be able to interact with my children.
Yeah.
So long as I had that, I will find a way to be happy in life.
Yeah.
Right. It wasn't focusing on getting back to my career. It wasn't focusing on getting a new house, new car, whatever else it might have been. It was just being able to be there for my children, with my children. And that's what I thought about for the 3 hours I was lying on the ground. Obviously managing my body, and happy to go into exactly what that looked like. But while I was doing all of this, my one thought was I just want to get back to my family and be able to interact with the kids. And I actually did think about what life might look like if I did end up in a wheelchair, and there's some entertaining stories around what that thought process was as well.
Yeah, so I guess we can get into that thought process definitely after the question I ask you now, because obviously you get shot 14 times and you're like your body's dying straight away, right?
Yep.
So you need to counteract that by potentially putting on tourniquets or patching yourself up because no one can get to you.
Yep.
So is that what you did? You started, like, did you have a spare tourniquet, or did you have to make one up, or did you have to start to patch the wounds, or
Didn't have anything with me.
Wow.
We did not carry anything in those days. And remember, this is 30 years ago. Practice has very much changed these days, but there was nothing that I had with me.
Yeah.
It was pure basic first aid.
Yeah.
So when I fired back, he stopped. One bullet hit a brick in the wall next to his head, and he got a little bit of shrapnel on his forehead. Another bullet skimmed across the back of him. I fired back 13 times.
Yeah.
I consciously wanted to fire back just 6 times because I couldn't see him. I didn't know where he was, but I consciously wanted to make sure I had enough ammo that if he did come out afterwards, I still had something left. So consciously, I only wanted to fire back 6 or 7 times. Video proves that I fired back 13 times, so just got a little bit excited.
Mm-hmm.
But when I fired back, he stopped. I then rolled to my right, and despite these injuries that I've got, I managed to get to my feet. And I stagger around the corner, and I remember trail of blood on the ground next to me. I lean on a wooden box, and as I move off of that wooden box, I remember seeing my blood handprint on that box. My legs are growing weak through shock, injury, the
loss of
blood
blood
loss, and all those things. And I just need to lean against a wall to gather my thoughts. As I lean against the wall, the bullet that has gone through my forearm has obviously gone through the bone, but it's also broken the bone in a second place as well. And so there's no support for my wrist whatsoever. And as I lean against the wall, my hand just folds back along my forearm.
Oof.
And I sometimes go into a longer story about this, but I look at that and I just think to myself, damn, this is not a good day.
No, not at all.
Not at all. But that, again, is how rational my thinking is. I'm able to look at that and not go into panic mode.
Yeah.
This is something that could be realistically expected as a result of being shot. Okay. And, I don't even have a good hand to lean on. So, damn, it's not a good day. But where I was at that stage isn't a safe place. But I also call out to my mates. So when I get shot and I stand up initially, I call out, I'm hit. You hear that on the video. I go around the corner, lean against the wall, and I call out to my mates, and they don't hear this, but I call out, I'm hit. I'm shot. I'm injured, and I need help. And then I start processing, what else do I need to do now? Where I am is not a safe place. And so I start moving back around the house or further around the house. But as I take 2 or 3 steps away from the wall, my legs grow so weak, I fall to my knees. Crawl along on my knees. Pistol in my hand for about 2 or 3 meters. Body gets weaker again, and I drop to my hands and knees. Crawl along on my hands and knees because I've just got no strength at all for about 2 or 3 meters. And then I look up, and there's a fence in front of me. And there's no way in the world I'm going to be able to climb that fence. I can't go back the other way because that's where the shooter is and where I've just been shot. Probably the most dangerous place to try and go back past. And at that point, I just collapse to the ground, roll onto my back, and that's where I stay for about the next 3 hours.
Obviously, your frame of mind is probably one of the things that kept you alive today, right?
Absolutely.
And keeping yourself calm in that situation, because if you start to panic, your blood starts to pump more.
Correct.
Everything goes around, you bleed out and you die. So, how important was it? Obviously, it was so important. I'm already answering my own question, but like mentally as well, being in that next 3 hours, what was your thought pattern here? Like, okay, the guys are going to be here in 15 minutes. This will be over, or I'm in for the long haul. I need to calm myself down, calm my breathing because I could be here for a while.
So this goes back to that conversation we had right at the very beginning. Fitness is 1/16 of the selection criteria.
Yeah.
So being fit, there's no two ways about it. That helped me. My resting heart rate at the time was 38 beats a minute.
Yep.
When I'm in absolute resting mode. So that certainly helped me. But if I hadn't been able to control my mind, I wouldn't have been able to control my body.
Yeah.
And so the thinking that I'd done beforehand was, if I get into this situation, there are 4 things that I need to do. The first is control panic. Don't let panic take control of the situation. I need to control shock, the body's physiological response, and that's heart rate and the ability to bleed and all those things. I need to slow down my heart, and I need to slow down my breathing. And if I could control those 4 things, it would slow down my rate of bleeding, and I would be able to survive for that little bit longer. But that's not something I came up with in the moment.
Yeah.
That's something that had come up with my own personal training, reflecting on what I had been trained in Star Group, and also as a deep ocean underwater recovery diver for police as well. So I was combining those 2 bodies of knowledge. I'd never been spoken to in Star Group about, if you get shot, these are the things that you need to do mentally, physically, process-wise, first aid-wise, yes. Mentally, emotionally, never. It was always, we're going to build you tough. You won't be affected by emotion. You won't feel these things. You won't let them affect you. Whereas we now know that the first thing that happens is our emotions will drive everything. And if you can't control your emotion, you won't be able to control anything else.
Yeah.
You won't be able to make rational decisions. You go back to monkey mind and basic mammalian instincts of what you know best, rather than what you know is the smartest thing to do. So I knew I needed to do those 4 things: control my mind, control shock, slow down the heart rate, slow down the breathing, so that it would slow down my rate of bleeding. But I've got a severed artery, the radial artery, and I've got a severed ulnar artery, and I'm lying for 3 hours with 2 severed arteries. One's blocked with a little bit of shrapnel. It stayed in there. The other one has the potential to freely bleed. I've got 2 bullets in the stomach. I've got 2 bullets in the thigh, one through the Achilles, left calf, behind the right knee. And the conversation that has been had with doctors afterwards is they don't know how I survived those injuries. I lost so much blood that the first doctor, Bill Griggs, an absolute brilliant interview in his medical military history, if you ever get to that point, but he was the first doctor to get to me with lots of experience in medical retrievals. He says, all the textbooks say that my heart should have stopped. The only reason my heart didn't stop is I hadn't read the textbooks. and I love the way he says it. But
that's brilliant.
Yeah. Well, it is brilliant. I think it's brilliant that I hadn't read the textbooks myself. But essentially, what I read into that is I defied medical knowledge. He has absolutely no idea how I've survived.
Wow.
What stops an artery from freely bleeding? A severed artery, all the textbooks say you should normally die within 3 minutes of a severed artery. So nobody can explain to me why that happened. I'm not the only person that's had a severed artery that hasn't bled out. There are other instances of it, but it's rare.
Yeah.
So,
I guess, and it comes back to controlling the mind in those situations.
A lot of it is the fact that I was able to control my emotions so that I could control my body, slow down my heart rate, slow down my breathing.
Yeah.
In fact, reflecting back on, I've been to a few of Dan Pronk's presentations, and he talks about breathing, and he talks about the military attitude to breathing. And when it's first introduced to anybody, people go, oh, breathing, yeah, right, that's so basic, that's never going to work for me. And in the military, they wanted to introduce it because they know how valuable controlling our breathing is to controlling our emotions and our emotional state, and getting back into that place where we can actually do the higher level thinking. But in the military, they couldn't introduce it as box breathing. They had to introduce it as battlefield breathing.
Yeah, okay.
And as soon as they mentioned, and this is what Dan says, as soon as they mentioned it was battlefield breathing, every soldier was focused.
Yeah.
This is something on the battlefield. I need to learn this. This is a skill for the battlefield. So sometimes it's how we frame things as to how appropriate or how much significance we give it. But I talk about it for corporates, for families, for kids going through school. Controlling our breathing will lower the intensity of our emotions, taking control of our actions.
Yeah.
And it just so much slows. And being a distance runner now, you'll know how much controlling your breathing increases your ability to push yourself further.
Yeah.
It's absolutely essential. And I'm a bike rider these days. I used to be a triathlete as well, but I'm so old, my knees don't work the way they used to. So bike riding's my thing. And I know when I'm climbing a hill, and massive intensity and all that sort of stuff, but I don't control my breathing, I will fade an awful lot quicker.
Yeah.
But it applies for CEOs, it applies for kids in schools, all that sort of stuff. And now I'm off on a tangent, and I'll let you go back to your next question.
And you bring up a good point, because me and Dan Pronk spoke about this as well. There's like the breathing, but also meditating and settling your mind. And we know now that there's been plenty of studies done that people that meditate can deal in high stress environments a lot better than people that don't meditate. And he spoke about this, and when he was in the military, back in the military, he found out all this stuff, and he said if he was back at the 2 Commando SAS helping them out, he would get guys to meditate, back in, and I can just picture in my mind now him trying to have that discussion with Special Forces soldiers, or even, Star Group soldiers as well. Like, hey guys, we need to meditate. We need to get good at breath work. They just would have looked at him and been like, that doesn't work.
That is stars and fairies and unicorns.
But it does actually work.
Oh, absolutely invaluable. And Yeah, I've listened to Dan's interview, and you mentioned, does that meditation help you during distance running if you're not listening to music? When I do my distance bike rides, and I've ridden to Melbourne in 4 days, 200 k's a day, and I don't have music in my ears, but I reflect on those times where I'm riding those distances, and I say that I get into a meditative state.
Yeah.
Where I'm just so relaxed that my mind starts wandering off. And I have had some of my best business ideas when I'm absolutely exhausted in that meditative state in the middle of a ride. And I've had to stop at the side of the road, get my phone out, and you can hear me panting into my phone. I've just had a great idea and I need to do, because you just get into that meditative state, and you get into flow.
Yeah.
And you can find solutions that other people don't.
Yeah, 100%. This podcast, funny enough, birthed out of a 40k run, and I was just running one day, and I thought, I'll jog 20k, and I got to the 20k mark, and I'm like, I've still got a couple gels in my pocket. I'll just keep running until I feel tired, and then I'll turn around. And I got to 20k, and then I was like, okay, this will be 40k. I'll turn around, and during that run, I thought to myself, what's one thing I can do with my life going forward now? Because I think I've accomplished a bit, but I want to accomplish more. What can I do? And and then I thought to myself, what's something that you have immediately within your friendship group or people that you know that can benefit the situation? I'm like, well, I've got a lot of mates with a lot of cool stories, and I've also got a bit of a cool story myself. And I'm like, well, what's something I can start tomorrow? Also using my, expressive nature as well. And then it was like, start a podcast. And I thought to myself, I might do that, pondered on it for a week, and then started the podcast.
Yeah, right.
Taught myself how to do all the editing and stuff like that. My wife has sort of told me how to, or shown me the really ins and outs of social media, so I can really grow that. And the things just take, it is in its stages of just going in a northward direction, taking off. But just like your point before, some of the best business ideas, or for me, it was this podcast birthed out of a long run. But I just got in that meditative state where I thought, I just had ideas flowing. This happens all the time on long runs for me. I generally run by myself without music, and I just find I get in this meditative state, and I just have so many thoughts come through my head, and I'll often talk to myself in these runs. So people in the park might look at this guy talking to himself running, and they're like, who's that? But there's just so much, it's just such a calm place for my mind to think in, especially when your body is just, it's sore, everything's like you have to get your breathing under control, but in some strange way, it just helps your mind calm, and then you can think clearly.
Absolutely. And I'm going to digress there and go back to my accountant. My accountant would get into that meditative state when she's in the middle of numbers, and she's just enjoying herself in numbers. And so this goes back to following your passion. Your meditative state does not have to be a physical expression.
Yeah.
It just has to be where you are the most calm, relaxed, and enjoying your life. And your mind relaxes and then starts getting creative.
Yeah. Just so we put a bit of context for the audience, because we left that story a bit open-ended. So what did happen after that? So, what was the end result of that situation where you got shot?
So I was lying on the ground fully conscious for 3 hours, and I was monitoring my body closing down. That whole time that I was on the ground, I was feeling the blood drain from my body. I didn't have tourniquets or anything else, but I knew first aid. So when I collapsed to the ground, I rolled onto my back. I've got a massive injury to my left thigh, so I bend my leg so that my thigh is higher than the level of my heart. I've got a massive injury to my left forearm, so I rest that on my left thigh to keep that above the level of the heart as well, and then go into those 4 steps that I need to control my bleeding. And I stay there for 4 hours. Now, my first instinct is to be aware of where he is and whether he's a threat to me. And there are certain times where he's shooting, and I thought he was coming right out to get me. But then I realized when I analyzed the bullets pounding through bricks, I thought he was standing in the kitchen, but he wasn't. He was actually in the attic, and I only knew that because I was able to analyse the trajectory of the dust coming out of the bricks, and that was absolutely flat before it started falling over the top of me. And so I realised he was at that level, and he was actually no threat to me while he was up there.
Yeah.
Because he couldn't shoot at me from that point. And so it was while he was shooting and I knew he was up there, I was able to actually relax and focus on controlling my body. When he stopped shooting, that's when I started thinking, where is he now? Is he coming to get me?
Yeah.
And the thought that ran through my mind and creativity kicked in during that time was I'd already called out, I'm hit. I called out to my mates, I'm hit, I'm hurt, I need help. So it started running through my mind, he knows that I'm hurt. He knows that I need help. And so I thought to myself, okay, I'm going to call out again. I called out, I'm hit, I'm hurt, but I can still shoot. And that was purely to play on his psychology. I have no idea whether he heard me or not, but I called it out loud enough that he should.
Yeah.
Whether it did or didn't, it made me feel better about it. So I took that proactive step, but I was also lying on the ground and just monitoring my body and keeping calm for that entire 3 hours. I said to you that I thought I may spend the rest of my life in a wheelchair. And there was one time while I was on the ground and I thought I may spend the rest of my life in a wheelchair. And if that is going to be the way, what's that going to look like? It's going to be kind of boring by comparison to what my life is at the moment. So how am I going to make that interesting? And I thought to myself, actually, I can put wheelchair basketball together with what I do now.
Yeah, wow.
And I already play basketball.
Isn't it crazy this stuff comes to you when you're in that state?
Oh, absolutely. Well, I've got 5 drivers, what I call 5 drivers for success. The first driver is a sense of optimism about the future.
Yeah.
And so while I was lying on the ground, I was looking, and this is an intuitive thing. I didn't have these. It's not until I reflect back after the shooting, I go, what was I doing? How was I doing this? And I was creating a sense of optimism for the future for myself. I said, if I spend the rest of my life in a wheelchair, how am I going to make it interesting? I already play basketball. I may be able to play wheelchair basketball. That'll at least be something of interest. And then I started thinking, I'm damn good at basketball. I could maybe make the Paralympic team. And if I make the Paralympic team, those guys are traveling the world playing basketball. I'm not traveling the world at the moment.
Yeah.
This actually could be a bit of a bonus.
That's a positive.
Yeah. Absolutely. The sense of optimism. And, you know, people in Special Forces, in Star Group, we have a slightly bigger ego than the average person. My ego kicked in at that stage, and I started thinking to myself, if I make the Paralympic team, if I'm able to add something to what they're already doing really well, and this is while I was on the ground, body bleeding, him shooting continuously, I started thinking to myself, if I make that team and I add to it, we may be able to make the Paralympic finals. I may end up with a gold medal as a result of being shot.
Yeah.
And so it was always looking towards that optimistic future, taking responsibility for my actions, my consequences, but also taking responsibility for creating a better future after making a choice that put me in these situations.
Yeah.
Right. And that was, I'm going to find a way to enjoy myself in this wheelchair.
Yeah. I've got sorry to jump in. I've got a story that's very, very similar to yours. We had a guy on our trip named Curtis McGrath, Kiwi. We named him because he was from New Zealand. He stepped on an IED overseas. He was an engineer, so he used to sweep for IEDs, and IED had low metal content in it. So his wand, which was a metal detector, didn't quite pick it up. Stepped on it, got both his legs blown off, and I wasn't there at the time. We were doing another clearance down another valley, but he was, as they were tourniqueting him up, loading him on the chopper, he said to the boys, he goes, you will see me in the next Paralympics. And since then, he's went on and been the world champion in para-canoeing for the past 3 world championships, and he's won over 12 gold medals in the Paralympics.
Yeah, right.
So, like, in that moment where he got his legs blown off, very much like you, he's thinking in his brain, like, how can I optimize this position that I've got with my legs blown off?
Yeah.
And he's sorry to jump in. And it's one of the things that have always like stuck with me from, there's quite a few things that have stayed with me since that trip, but just his optimism in that moment in time. It is like, it still blows me away today, that story.
Absolutely. that sense of optimism gives you a reason to drive.
Yeah.
There is going to be some reward for the effort that I'm about to put in, rather than this is absolutely pointless, why even bother? There is some reward for the effort you're about to put in. To take it out of the military context, I've also got another mate who has now passed away. He was a pilot but had a motorbike accident and broke his back. In the very, very early stages of his recovery and rehabilitation, and he loves to quote it, or he loved to quote it, he said to the doctors, well, at least I'll get to use those handicapped car parks, and they're a lot closer to the doors of the shopping centre.
Yeah.
So, the dark sense of humour really helps, but just having something to look forward to, absolutely invaluable. And I know that Dale would have had a lot of other things positive rather than the car parks, but it was just that attitude of this has happened to me, take responsibility for what's happened, take responsibility for the future afterwards as well.
So did the shooter end up dying, or how did that siege end?
So I was on the ground. The boys came in to get me. They risked their lives to come in and get me, and that needs to be made very, very clear. The decision they made to come in and get me, the shooter was still shooting. They believed that he had a sniper location. He could see everybody moving. And so they knew that there was a very real possibility they may be shot and injured as well, maybe shot and killed. They risked their lives to come in and get me. They picked me up, took me out. I was brought out after 3 hours. The siege went on for 41 hours.
Wow.
The longest siege ever in South Australia, and the most number of rounds fired between police and an offender in South Australia. Queensland is a very different story now. But he got minor injuries, only those 2 injuries that I spoke about earlier. He only got those minor injuries. He was taken to hospital, treated, tried to claim that he had mental health issues, but that was refuted very, very quickly. The only thing that he had was a lot of paranoia in his personality, nothing else. And 2.5 years after the shooting, we got him to court, and we had the first trial. He was convicted, 22 years jail, 18 years non-parole. He appealed, won the appeal. Another great story on that one. But he went back to court, stayed in custody the whole time, went back to court another 2.5 years later. So this is now 5 years after the shooting. And it's the longest court trial in South Australia at that time. The only one to be longer than that is the bodies in the barrels.
Snowtown.
Snowtown afterwards. And again, he was convicted. 22 years jail, 18 years non-parole, upheld. He appealed. That went on for 10.5 years. It cost you and I $10.5 million.
Wow.
Back in 1994 to 2005. And the conviction and penalty upheld. He spent 22 years in jail. This is 30 years ago. Yeah. So for the last 8 years or 6 years, whatever it is, he's been walking amongst us.
Wow. In Adelaide? South Australia?
I probably shouldn't say anything about it.
Okay. That's fair enough.
Not my place to disclose that information.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. That's it's so interesting that those people can still be walking amongst us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Is there a part of you that like does that stir up emotions in you?
That goes into a much deeper conversation as well, and comes up a lot when I'm talking to groups of people. Do I want any retribution? Do I want revenge? Do I have any fears of running into him as I walk around the community? There is no two ways about it that during my rehabilitation, there is a moment, and I used to write my emotions down, my thoughts, my feelings, processes that I was going through, and I read back through it, and there is one paragraph which is only about 4 lines long, and in this paragraph it is pure, vicious, venomous hatred for the man, for what he's done to me, what he's putting me through, and I'm sure that if I had met him at that point and had the capacity, I may have done something nasty. And I don't shy away from having that feeling, but I don't have any of that emotion in me now. And the conversation I have, and I love having this in schools with kids, is if I took action at that time, or if I wanted to still take action now, what sort of person would that make me?
Yeah, exactly right.
It would make me the same person that he is, and I don't want to be that person. So, people talk about being the bigger man. That doesn't really resonate with me, although the ethos is make decisions that you're going to be proud of, that you are going to be proud of. Retribution and revenge rarely resolves anything for the emotions, and I say rarely. So I have no want of retribution or revenge, but I'm also not shy about saying that if something bad happened to him, I probably might buy a nice bottle of whiskey and have a little nip that night. But I don't want it to happen.
Yeah.
But, if it did, case rare. So that sits very comfortably with me. Am I concerned about running into him in the community? And I've thought about this a lot, so, I'm able to articulate it reasonably well. 85% of my mind is very relaxed. He is not a threat to me. He probably has no want of retribution, revenge. And the bonus is this wasn't a personal thing. He didn't go out to shoot Derrick McManus.
Yeah.
He shot the cop that was walking down the side of the house. So it wasn't a personal thing. So my mind is 85% relaxed. There is 15% of my mind that says never be complacent.
Yeah.
This is a type of person who cannot actually be accurately predicted. You don't know what they're going to do.
Yeah, exactly.
So
right.
15% of my mind is always vigilant as to what might happen. My bigger concern is for my children.
Yeah.
Because if he knows who my children are, and we don't hide on socials, and he runs into them in community, I've already had a very clear conversation with my children about he may approach them. Yeah. And he may want to talk to them and tell them his side. And he was the sort of person who will get in their face. How's that going to affect them physically, mentally, emotionally? How will they be able to manage it? What will it look like? What strengths do they have? So we've had that very clear conversation. So that's probably my bigger concern.
And this is one of the things where I actually think sometimes police work, first responders, they actually have it worse than military people, right? And for this exact reason. Like, you go on daily deployments, but the people that you work around or the people that you've done jobs on, they can be people in the state living amongst you.
Absolutely.
Like we just go overseas and we get in a gunfight with someone in Afghanistan. I will never see them again.
Yep.
Never. So I never have that thought in my head of, hey, am I going to walk around or I've done something over there. Will it come bite me back here? That's never, ever crossed my mind. But with you, like you're retired and it's still, there's still a bit of you where you've had to have discussions with your family members about it.
There are hard aspects to the military. There are hard aspects to first responders. And whether that be police or fireys or AMBOs, we're all exposed to those sorts of things on a regular basis. But I also accept that I may sit down at a restaurant and somebody that I've arrested who will remember me more than I remember them may be sitting in that same restaurant as well.
Yeah.
And this is why military and police rarely sit in a restaurant with their back to the restaurant. They always like their back to the wall.
Yep.
Yeah. Now, I'm aware of that, but I'm also aware that I can sit with my back to the restaurant. But then I'm also aware that I'll be watching people's eyes that I'm sitting with to see whether their eyes highlight or whether they focus on something. I'm looking for reflections that I can see people moving, mirrors or paintings or, not paintings, but pictures with glass fronts. So I can sit with my back to the restaurant, but I'm still vigilant continuously.
Yeah.
And I don't think I'm hyper-vigilant. I don't think I'm hyper-vigilant, but I know I am vigilant.
Yep. Now, one of the remarkable things about this story is that you got back to your original job after the incident. So, I had another guy on this podcast. His name was Scott Ryder. He was in a chopper crash in Afghanistan that killed my cousin, killed 3 Australian soldiers and my cousin in 2010. She landed at 250 kilometres an hour.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it was pretty significant. But he was on that crash, and he talks about some of the injuries he had, which wasn't as significant as yours, but his desire to get back to the job was because he loved it, not because he felt like he needed to, prove to other people and stuff like that he needed to get back to the job. It was just because he purely loved what he did. Was that the same for you?
Yeah, absolutely. And sorry for your specific loss there.
Yeah, thanks.
But yeah, absolutely, it was for me. It was about chasing my passion. There was no, I have to prove this, I have to get back, otherwise people will think I'm weak. It was purely based on the fact that I loved Star Group. It was my absolute passion. It was my drive, second to my family, but it was my drive, and I wanted to get back there. But there was also the acceptance with the injuries that I have. Everybody said I will never walk properly. Doctors said, with the injuries that I've got to my legs, I'm still missing 30% of my thigh on my left-hand side with those 2 bullets yet. I've still only got 20% of my Achilles tendon on the right-hand side. And everybody's gone, listen, you're going to have problems walking properly, let alone running and hopping and skipping and jumping and climbing out of helicopters and all that sort of stuff. But there was this acceptance in me. I may not make it, but I wanted to have a crack. I wanted to give it the best effort I could without or already accepting that I'm not going to have a guilt if I don't make it. But it was this absolute passion to get back there, and I drove myself. It took 2.5 years of physical rehabilitation before I was able to make a full return to Star Group.
Yep.
No restrictions, back to everything that I used to do in the past.
Back to some of the first jobs that you went on after that, did you ever hesitate knowing, do you ever have that like mental bit of blank in you that went, or, what's going on here sort of thing? Like, did you ever pull back because of that incident?
And this goes back to the mental, emotional preparation going back into that environment. I knew that was always going to be a potential.
Yeah.
And I knew that if I do that, not only will it endanger my life, it will endanger the operators with me. And so I wanted to make sure everything I did lowered the risk of that happening. So, and certainly the guys around me were aware of that as well, and they were very cautious of it. So going back into Starries, my first introduction was going back into training. As you'd appreciate, very realistic training. In fact, Star Force and SAS are the only people who use live rounds while moving in training. Our weapons cross across each other, and we are shooting live around each other. And so we went back into training with simunition. Then we went back into training with live ammunition. And at no stage did I balk during those times, people firing back towards me with simunition as well. I then went into the outer cordon of an operation. So not directly into the action.
Dripped you back
Absolutely.
In. Yeah.
Outer cordon, inner cordon, arrest team, and then entry team. And at every stage, it was just absolutely passionately focused on the job that I was doing. And after jobs, some of the guys come to me afterwards and gone, hey, Derrick, how did that feel going back in there? And I've gone, felt good. What are you talking? Oh, yeah, I suppose that was kind of like Nuri, wasn't it? Because I was just so focused on enjoying what I was doing. Always aware that it was a potential, but it never actually came to that point where I did ever balk or.
And it brings you back to your original point. Find your passion.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now, moving on from the police and Star Group, so you do some stuff now around motivational talking and also, some workshops with businesses. And
yeah,
did you want to talk me through that?
Yeah, I might just jump back a step. And
yeah, sure.
One thing we talked about earlier was psychology and the psychiatrist. One of the best, most valuable things that I did just 5 days after the shooting was throw my hand in the air and say, get me a psych, I want to talk to a psych.
Yeah.
I'm sure the guys around me are going, oh, this guy's strange, weak, there's something wrong with him.
Especially back in the 90s.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It was just not the done thing.
It was a different game then.
Everybody else in Star Group was offered psychological counselling, and everybody's gone, no, don't need that, do not need that. Looking back, everybody realises that there was psychological effects and some major psychological effects on some of the people. But I threw my hand in the air. But it wasn't because I thought I was weak. I didn't think I had anything wrong with me. And I now refer to what I did was psychological coaching, not psychological help so much. All I wanted to do was the same thing that I did prior to the shooting. I wanted to find out, I've just experienced a shooting, a major trauma. What will the future look like? What can I anticipate is going to happen to me? How am I going to feel, and what resources do I have to be able to manage that if it does occur? I'd already accepted that nightmares, flashbacks, panic attacks, all those sorts of things may happen. If they do happen, how will I handle them? And so I wanted to pick the psychiatrist's brain about how that might affect me and what resources I had and what I could potentially do. And so I sat down with one of Australia's best trauma psychiatrists, Dr. Sandy McFarlane, an Australian, in charge of the Centre for Trauma in Adelaide University. And we sat for about 3 hours. He picked my brain, I picked his brain. At the end of that 3 hours, and this is just 3 months after the shooting, the very first meeting I had with him, he picked my brain, I picked his brain, and he said, Derrick, psychologically, you can go back to work tomorrow and you don't need any ongoing therapy. I already had it in place.
Wow.
Yeah, it still blows me away that he was able to do that. I anticipated I'd be going to several sessions. Most people thought I'd be in therapy for decades.
Yeah, 100%.
But this comes back to, what you want to wander into now. The work that I do with corporates, schools, and just community groups.
Yeah.
And what I talk about is that mindset. I call it human durability. It's a term that I've coined myself, and it's about sustaining optimal performance. Lots of people talk about let's get to peak performance and then try to sustain that. But as we all know, if you try to sustain peak, that will lead to burnout. Right, and burnout means that you're going to have a drop in performance and there's going to be a massive recovery period, blah, blah, blah. So I talk about sustained optimal performance. Peak performance is part of it. There's certainly times where we need to have peak, but there's certainly times when we need to go away and get a massage. We need to have our holidays. We need to go and watch our kids in school concerts that are absolutely boring, but this is part of normal life. We need to schedule times and prioritize times like that for us to be able to wind down. And so it's sustained optimal performance. What do you need to do to get the best performance out of yourself at the right time?
Yeah.
Okay. And I talk about two different models of resilience. One is functional resilience. This is the stuff that we need to do day to day, week to week, month to month to get through the stuff that we don't really enjoy, but we have to do. But it's also functional resilience is where we do the rest, the relax, the replenish, the re-energize, so that we can then re-engage into what I call aspirational resilience. And aspirational resilience is 6 specific steps we can do to keep pushing ourselves, to stay absolutely focused and motivated and driven to achieve those goals that we want to achieve. We go, oh my God, can I really do that? I have a passion for it. I want to make it happen. But the essence of durability is understanding that aspirational resilience is there for a period of time. And if you stay in aspirational too long, you will go into burnout. And so you've got to know what the signs are. And this goes back to understanding the challenges you're going to take on, how you're going to feel, and the resources you have to manage it. So you've got to understand that if you are heading towards burnout, it is time to flick back to functional resilience, rest, replenish, re-energize, and then re-engage. So if you stay in aspirational too long, you'll go into burnout. But some people stay in functional too long and then they go into rust out because they're not using their minds. They're not using their abilities.
And they also might get a bit comfy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, comfort zone. Oh, that opens up another conversation for me. I sometimes look at things differently to what other people do, because the common thought around comfort zone is we've got to get out of our comfort zone. We've got to, because that's where growth is, that's where development is, that's where achievement is. And I completely acknowledge and embrace all of that, but that will keep you in aspirational resilience. Sometimes you've got to climb back into your comfort zone so you can rest, relax, replenish. And that's not just replenishing physically, that is replenishing mentally as well, because your comfort zone is where there is no stress. This is where you can completely relax and be yourself. This is your meditative state.
Yeah.
And you've got to know when to go back to that time so you can get all that energy, physical, mental, and emotional back, so you can jump back into aspirational and keep on pushing yourself to keep on achieving those goals. The durability comes from being able to flick from one and back to the other at the appropriate times.
Yeah, that's where the science backs it, or the science goes behind it, isn't it? And knowing when to do that.
And doing it proactively and early.
Yeah. Yeah, no, great point. So if someone does want to reach out to you to potentially talk more about this, how do they get in contact with you?
Obviously, I've got a website. I'm on socials, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. I have had people contact me on Instagram and book me just through Instagram messaging.
Yeah.
So, it's a different world to the world I grew up in.
Yeah.
But I'm available there, and I'm very happy just to have discussions with people.
Yep.
Hey, Derrick, I'm thinking about doing this. Would it fit? Some people say, okay, thanks very much, but that's not exactly where we're going at the moment. We might talk to you later.
Yeah.
Very happy to have those discussions.
Yeah. Well, you'll be tagged in all my posts as well, and I'll get your information after this when the episode goes live in a couple of weeks. So if people can't find you on Instagram or something like that, then they can just go through my Instagram and they'll be able to find you there. But
beautiful.
Hey, this is a question that I'll ask everyone before I wrap the episode up. If you could give your 18-year-old self one piece of advice about life, what would it be?
Relax more and trust myself more. And this is something I reflect on specifically for the shooting. People say, how did you know to do that at the time of the shooting? How did you know to do that during your recovery? All I did was go to my gut and say, I believe, and my gut was based on training, but also on what I know instinctively works for me. And I just trusted my gut and said, in this moment, I need to be able to do these things. And it worked for me. So relax more. Don't put so much pressure on myself, despite the fact that we need to be aspirational, but relax more and trust myself more. And would I be a different person? I don't know. But I would have started achieving things an awful lot earlier.
Mate, Derrick, that was fantastic. And thank you very much for your time, and thanks for jumping on 2Worlds Collide podcast.
Mate, it's been an absolute pleasure being here. Since you invited me, I started listening to your podcast, and that itself has been a pleasure.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And for more information, head over to our Instagram at 2Worlds Collide podcast. Take care.